So once you get to a point where you feel ready to implement the things you've discussed with your team, how do you know when something is proving to be successful, it's not successful, or if it needs more time? Because you were just talking about iteration, and I'd love to kind of delve into that part of it.
Yeah, definitely. I think the big key here is that you as a product manager have to help um, lead the definition of success before you take anything on, right? Because you're not going to be able to measure that unless you actually decide that upfront or unless you agree to that upfront. And like I say agree because you really have to get every stakeholder bought in before you, not necessarily before you build something, but bought in on what success looks like upfront. And so I think like building in the structure for user feedback has been really helpful for me in this, right? And that goes back to the iterative process that you mentioned. So not just after a product's been released, but the more that you involve them in that iterative process and the more you kind of ask for both formal feedback, like direct feedback, as well as like just consistent, continuous feedback, I think that's a better sense of knowing that like during the process you're on track and you're building the right product, but then at the end you've built it in such a way that it will hit that success criteria, right? I think for me it's really important to like I mentioned, define it up front and then revisit it along the way and make sure that that's still either you're still tracking to that measurement, or I think completely honestly sometimes you have to get back together with stakeholders and say, I think we might be measuring the wrong thing. I think this turned into a bigger project, or maybe there's like another implication that we also need to consider. And I think that's totally fair to be flexible in that as well.
It's so interesting you say that. It gives me deja vu because I just listened to this audio book, Adam Grant's new book called Think Again. And he's the best-selling author of originals and all these great works.
Yeah.
And that was actually something I've heard him say very recently. So it's funny to hear you say that, and the value of outlining what success looks like before you put something out into the world, so valuable and so powerful. Which is to say, step aside, Adam Grant, Steph Brill, come onto the stage.
It's so
That is
it's so funny you say that because when I was transitioning from being an engineer to a product manager, I think a lot of what I did was like, oh shit, like I'm in a new role now. Like I need to figure out like the best way to do this. So you go to Dr. Google and you
yeah,
do some research and you talk to your friends who are product managers as well. And like because this role is so dynamic across different, like depending on if you're at like a FANG company or like a more
yeah.
traditional corporate organization or a startup, it's just so different and like what you're going to be doing day to day. And like the what I would say like one of the five things that like really remained constant across that was like define success up front. And so
Yeah.
now that mantra has been like completely ingrained into my mind and it's proven so helpful in like every single project I've taken on here so far. So Adam Grant's right too.